Greetings, my friends. Welcome to the Grit and Equity Talks podcast with yours truly, Dr. India White. I'm thrilled to be here with you. So many of you are out there doing your thing, rocking it out at conferences, rocking it out, in summer school, training, preparing for the next school year. I'm so thrilled to see all of the great reports and all of the great things that are taking place across the nation. And thank you to all of you that have opened your arms to me. I just got back from North Dakota, had a blast with all of you guys. It was great energy, very balanced, fun, loving, wholesome. I can't wait to come back. With that said, I want to go right into this episode of Grit and Equity Talks podcast. Today, we will be talking about a really, really neat, controversial subject. So hang in there with me. Now, before we get started, I do want to make some announcements. First things first, the Grit and Equity Talks podcast with yours truly, Dr. India White, will be featured on X Factor EDU Network, hosted by Dr. Matthew Joseph and the Tribe. It can also be found on Spotify if you want to just tune in and listen there. Thank you, Dr. Matthew and the team. Thank you to all those that have gone over to the X Factor EDU Network and has supported, my podcast and the other ones that are on the show. Next thing I want to talk to you guys about is my announcement regarding the Grit Mini Workshop. Some of you have been looking at that. Thank you so much. Go to grassrootsworkshops.com and check out the new Grit Mini Workshop. Thank you, Robert and Tribe, for that opportunity. This will be talking about how to harness grit to help students thrive. So it's just a cute little thing that you can do, over the summer. If you want to do it for a PLC, whatnot, there you have it. It's there for you. I also want to remind you guys to check out my website whenever you get a chance for books, blogs, and to schedule me for a speaking event. Thank you to Stockton County for booking me. I can't wait to go over there and help you guys in California. Thank you to so many of you that have had me out already to come out and do some trainings with you. I am thrilled. Can't wait. Speaking of that, I do want to also let you guys know some upcoming events. Super excited about. FCTM conference is this week. Hopefully we don't get blown away by the storm or by the blob of whatever that the Weather Channel is saying is on there. They're not giving us specifics yet. And I understand, they don't want to, get themselves in any trouble by, misrepresenting a storm. However, I do think that we all need to keep our eyes out. If you're out there in Florida, north of Florida, whatever, if you're traveling throughout the state, there's a blob over by Mexico, and then there's a blob over near Orlando-ish area, maybe a little bit north. So stay tuned to what's going to happen there. I hope that it goes north. I hope it doesn't, pass us so that we can just continue with the conference. If something happens, of course, I'm sure FCTM, they are amazing. They will keep us posted. So for those of you that will be in Florida for this, I'm super thrilled to see you at the FCTM conference. I can't wait to see everyone and to also do some presentations. I know we have Sal Khan is coming out for Khan Academy. He will be a keynote. I'm so excited about that. I really hope to meet him. And then also we've got, I think Dr. Chris Childs will also be kicking it off with the keynote as well. So good energy, good people. Thanks for the FCTM board, for the Tribe, for helping us with that. I will also be seeing you guys at the CAMPS conference in July. I will be doing some featured sessions. Thank you, CAMPS, amazing rock stars, for having me at the CAMP conference here in Texas this year. Can't wait to see you guys next month. I'll also be hanging out with y'all at NCSM. Can't wait to do major speaker session and some other sessions there. I think I'll also be checking out the Black Women in Math booth and all that stuff as well. I'll be at NCTM. Can't wait to do a little meet and greet and stuff like that there with you guys. Can't wait to see you there. I am thankful also for ICTM in Iowa. I'll be a featured speaker. Grateful for that featured keynote. And OCTM in Ohio, scheduled to do some speaking there. And then at the ATMNE conference, I think this is in either New Hampshire or British Columbia. I'm super excited about that as well, to be a featured speaker there. I know there's another conference. Please forgive me. I'm not trying to leave anybody out. If you also are wanting to slot me, I am here. I'm available. Get me on your calendar. Let's see, what can we do together? How can we close the achievement gap together? How can we develop grit in students and teachers all over this nation so that we can continue to be amazing and surpass our expectations? I'm here for you. Now, with that said, I also want to remind you guys to please follow me when you get a chance on social media. Facebook, Miss India White. LinkedIn, The India White. Twitter, Indie Speak and Teach. Instagram, Indie238. YouTube is India White 123, and TikTok is Dr. India White. Let's make it happen. If you're wanting to be featured on the Grit and Equity Talks podcast, you can email me also at india.white.123@gmail.com, and we will get you scheduled. Now, I am going to do this podcast because I have heard so much talk about equity, grit, and what it looks like in the classroom, what's really needed, and what should we really focus on? Should we really focus on culture and things like that? Should we focus on developing motivating students through grit? And so I want to come on here with a position, and I want to say, let's focus on true inclusion. And I think it's going to be academic grit versus a focus on DEI, solely on DEI. And why am I saying this? Because there are so many different classrooms across the nation that might be completely one race, not any fault of their own. Like, say you have a predominantly white institution where you're just in a very European descent area. That's no fault of your own, but what can you do to still help those students succeed? What if you're teaching an all gifted class? Is there any hope for you because you're not focusing on DEI? Well, my answer to you is yes, there is hope. There is a way to still help your students, and it's going to be through focusing on academic grit. However, I will talk about, a little bit about DEI, what that's all about, but we're going to then lead with grit. And I found some really cool articles, so hang in there with me. First things first is I want to present with you some articles. So I'm going to talk of DEI in academia. So, okay, let's talk about it. So it says, you're going to create inclusive and welcoming environments for diverse students. See, it seems like it always focuses on diverse students, and it really shouldn't. I think that, yes, that is imperative, but it is not the entire umbrella of education. I am working on some things for you to really break that down, but here they're talking about it. It's becoming increasingly important in academia. Institutions recognize the value of creating inclusive and welcoming environments, right? For students with diverse backgrounds. This is great, right? I understand that. But like I said, what about the entire nation and those that aren't really diverse and they still need some achievement? So let's first talk about this. So it says, understanding the issues that exist with DEI. So there's representation gaps among faculty and staff. So, there's underrepresented groups, whether it's racial groups, ethnic minority groups, women in STEM, LGBTQ, and it goes on and on. It talks about the lack of diversity and how that can result in a limited range of perspectives and experiences. Yes, I understand that. And it also talks about what about, feelings of isolation and alienation among underrepresented students. Now, I do think that it is imperative to celebrate and highlight these underrepresented, marginalized groups. However, what I don't want is a sense of victimhood or, this victim mentality of, oh gosh, woe is me, there's no representation, so I can't be successful. I don't think that's true. I think that you can still be successful, and it's going to be through grit. And so I think that, we need to figure out a way to serve every single student that has, ethnic representation, or those that do not have ethnic representation. And I know grit is the answer for that. So let's keep going. Let's read a little bit more about this article just to kind of see, about DEI in academia and how it's affected. So it talks about some of the things it does is it really helps to shed a light on, whether it's unconscious bias, discrimination and microaggressions, inadequate support systems for diverse students. Okay, that's cool. Inclusive curricula and teaching practices. This is great. It also helps with campus climate and a sense of belonging. That is awesome. And I think that, the benefit of it is, yes, it does create a sense of belonging for students that are of underrepresented groups. And it helps with, dealing with unconscious bias. The only thing is, we should not do this to the point that we are beating down those that might have a bias and, unbeknownst to them, they're not doing it to hurt anyone. It's just there. So yes, we do need to have teachings that are wholesome and uplifting, that says, okay, even if you have a bias, this is how you work through it. And I've mentioned, Harvard has a wonderful implicit bias test that, really helps us to monitor where we are and how to get through that. And it's really, really neat. And it does provide a path of hope. But let's keep focusing on what else they have to say. And then we're going to shift our focus on what I think matters more, which is academic grit. So it talks about how you have that campus climate and sense of belonging. And so it says a lack of inclusivity and equity can contribute to a negative campus climate where diverse students may not feel valued, respected, or included. I want to say this though. It's never, I don't think it's a sole intention of leaders to make students feel like they don't belong or like they're not respected. Maybe in some places, but majority wise, I don't think so. I think that, this is why we need to focus on other methods, so that students don't have this vengeful or resentful type of desire or even experience when they're learning in the classroom. So it talks about how this, yes, it can negatively affect a student's mental health, their academic performance, and overall satisfaction. However, although yes, these things can affect, I think that if we focus more on their grit levels and on how they are regarding their work ethic in general, we can still have hope in spite of whatever they have going on. Then it talks about how there's insufficient DEI training and awareness, and how faculty and staff, they might not have the necessary training and awareness to effectively promote DEI, which can lead to unintentional biases, exclusionary practices, and missed opportunities to create a more inclusive academic environment. Yes, that is true. And it talks about how, you can take steps forward by understanding the importance of DEI in academia. Before diving into strategies for promoting DEI, it is crucial to understand its importance in academia and having a diverse student body, how that offers a wide range of perspectives, experiences, ideas, and fosters a more vibrant and innovative learning environment. I think that's great. It says, additionally, inclusive and equitable academic institutions, they can attract top talent, and also they can enhance research collaborations and create a positive campus climate that can support the success of all students. That's great. And that's what we want. We want success for all students. So they're talking about some things you want to do: cultivate a diverse faculty and staff, implement inclusive curricula and teaching practices, offer targeted support for diverse students. So this can help address unique challenges and barriers that students face in academia. By offering targeted supports, universities can create a more inclusive and equitable environment that promotes the success of all learners. I think this is great. However, what about the other students that also have barriers and they need support as well? Do we leave these kids hanging? And that has been some of the talk I've heard, just in the work I've been doing, is what about everyone else? Like, I understand, we're pushing DEI for our BIPOC community. Yes, this is right. It is great to make sure we have everyone at the table. But what about all of your students? What about the middle class student that is just doing great and they still need help in the classroom? So then that means that we need to start shifting our focus towards also academic grit, not just focusing on, okay, I'm going to provide these extra accommodations because you're a student of color, but to provide accommodations just because you are a student in my classroom, providing gritty practices and things that you can do to help you to be successful, no matter what your skin color is, no matter what your socioeconomic status is, helping you because you are a student, and it's right to help you because you are a student in my classroom. So we're going to talk about that and what academic grit focus looks like. So with that said, I was able to find an article that talks about academic grit, and it says, how are they related to primary math achievement? Math is my area, so that's what we're going to dig into. So I did, in recent years, Dweck and Duckworth, they introduced two important concepts in student learning: mindsets and grit. So you can have a growth mindset, you can have a fixed mindset, and then, of course, you can have grit as a trait. Okay, so these are different things. They do kind of weave together and they help each other, but it's really beautiful because all of these focus on all students, no matter their background, no matter, where they're coming from and things like that. So I think it's great. So it says here, these variables can drastically change the way individuals handle a learning situation, the degree of effort and persistence they display, and eventually their level of achievement. Exactly. That's what we're after. We're after achievement levels. So it says recent literature, it recommends using specific domain specific rather than domain general instruments to explain school achievement. Now let's keep going down. So I highlighted another section. I thought this was really neat. It says the indirect effect of growth math mindset on math achievement by academic grit was positive and significant. Again, the indirect effect of growth math mindset on math achievement mediated by academic grit was positive and significant. So it was positive and significant. It says the indirect effect of a fixed math mindset was non-significant. Okay. It says finally, the effect of academic grit on math achievement was positive and significant. So this is a study. This is an ERIC file. So this is legit. Okay. It says the SEM model explained 36% of the variance in math achievement and 64, look at that, 64% of academic grit. School-based interventions are recommended to promote a growth math mindset and academic grit. Practical and theoretical implications are discussed in detail. So, we can look a little bit throughout this article. I just thought this was really neat here. It says Duckworth also argued that grit is also changeable and malleable. Therefore, it has great potential to facilitate development and success. So true. Both Dweck's and Duckworth's conceptualization of mindset and grit were domain general, meaning they apply to fields from the school to the workplace. So everyone needs it. This is great. So, you keep going down and you'll see all of this stuff. So it talks about her grit scale, which is developed by Duckworth and Quinn, which is wonderful. And it talks about how they recommend a reconceptualization of grit. And so, they also talked about how some studies demonstrated greater criterion-related validity of perseverance and effort than consistency of interests. So it's all about the perseverance and effort. And so I think that's, my passion is, to make sure that we are doing our part when it comes down to cultivating perseverance and effort of students. So I'm going to get out of this article, dig through together, and I think it's imperative. So, it says, we can end academic tracking fast, or we can do it right. And so look, it says, we can end academic tracking, and it says, teachers need more than a Band-Aid in the name of equity to help all students reach grade level standards. Again, teachers need more than a Band-Aid in the name of equity to help all students reach grade level standards. So this is by Miriam, who wrote this in June. And so let's see what they are saying here. So in her book, Dreamtown, Shaker Heights in the Quest for Racial Equity, the author, Laura Meckler, presents a number of scenarios that revolve around searching for ways to close the opportunity gap, which we've heard that before in Ohio. So long story short, let's keep going. It says in vignettes that she shares, teachers discuss successes and struggles with tracking and holding all students to expectation of meeting grade level content. So it says in 2018, the study entitled The Opportunity Myth, which I don't know if you guys have read that. I have looked at that. The educational consulting firm TNTP found that among more than 4,000 students, that the students of color received significantly lower percentage of grade appropriate work than their white peers. So then the question is it a performance thing? Or is it a tracking thing? That is also attributing to the opportunity/achievement gap. So it says, Meckler writes that in Shaker Heights, with the creation of heterogeneous groupings rather than tracked classes, the hope that was everyone had access to rigorous curriculum in a classroom that included more advanced students and that they would think of themselves as learners who could handle more challenging material. And when you have them thinking like that, that definitely attributes to their grit and making them want to be gritty, because now they're like, oh, I'm in a more challenging class. I need more grit. I can do this. And that's what it's all about, is getting the focus right. The focus should not be, oh, I'm in this class because of my skin color. I'm in this class. It should be, I'm in this class because I have the grit. I have the mindset. I have the rigor that it's going to take for me to excel as a learner. So we've got to get the focus back on the academic grit of students. So it says that ultimately the success of teachers in the examples that Meckler shared is varied, leaving questions hanging in the air. So has trying been enough? Interesting, right? So it says, beyond G.R.I.T's detracking has been a complex but necessary first step in combating racism in schools nationwide. Too many students and teachers are familiar with the feeling of walking down the hallways, peering into classrooms that from grade to higher grade become more segregated. Now, that's a very interesting point. Let's keep reading. So it says, by high school, primarily white and Asian students sit in honors and AP advanced placement courses, while Black and majority or Latino students make up the majority of on-level or remedial courses. And I guess they're attributing this to tracking. So it says, to get a sense of what differentiation looks like in practice, consider a 6th grade language art class that's talking about wildlife habitats for background content as they read Hatchet by Gary Paulson. So the student or the teacher chooses to address the Common Core informational reading, which says determine a central idea of a text and how it is conveyed through particular details. Provide a summary of the text, distinct from personal opinions or judgments. So in this classroom, many students, they're able to immediately identify the main idea of the short article about wildlife habitats. Okay, let's keep going. It says some students are bored because of the cognitive load. For them, it's light. So some students, so teachers provide an extension option to compare and contrast wildlife and human habitats. However, for a few students, finding the central idea proves challenging, so the teacher hands out sentence starters. Which, there's nothing against sentence starters. Even gifted learners or advanced learners can get sentence starters. So the most important thing is the scaffold, right, to get them going. So it says, when teachers struggle to get or to help their students and differentiated is floated as a solution, the teachers are understandably dubious. Okay, so for one thing, adjusting instruction to meet the learning needs at various levels, it takes time, right? For another, teacher training or training teachers how to effectively implement differentiated instruction. It's not a one and done, right? Exactly. So let's keep reading. So it says, many school systems have begun addressing years of systemic bias in course placement with the technical fix and a change in formal structure alone rather than a more in-depth solution. Now, that might be the problem as well, is what's going on with administrators and principals. I think they need to also be in this conversation. It should not just be teachers trying to figure out what to do. Sometimes a school district is pressured to cover various parts and various courses to make sure that all of the maths are covered, all of the Englishes are covered, things like that. And you only have so much placement, right, for each student. So that is another issue in itself, right? Is how are we filling up those classes so that teachers have jobs, right? So that students have a place to go when they're in school. So anyways, so it says districts and tracking and put all students in the same context classes. This action expresses the right intent, but it is a Band-Aid fix that is destined to fail unless school districts can create a deeper level of adaptive change that stops shortchanging students of color in their learning. Such a change requires consistent training and a lot more work. So it's saying here that the general absence of clear professional development design around detracking is frustrating. So the solution that is most frequently offered to address the highly varied needs of students in one classroom is applied to differentiated instructional practices. So in this model, a teacher focuses on all students, right, on a learning objective based on the grade level standard that everyone in the room must meet. However, because of individual differences, some students need to be scaffolded up toward that standard, right, with extra support, while other students are ready to go beyond the standard, right? So it says for teachers, the general absence of a clear professional development design around detracking is frustrating. And so it says, for one thing, adjusting instruction to meet learning needs at varying levels takes time, a commodity that most school-based personnel track. For another, training teachers how to effectively implement differentiated instruction is not a one and done, right? And it's important not to rob teachers of their needed planning and grading time to work. So it might work, for instance, to delegate a monthly staff meeting to instructional capacity rather than operational items. So, and it says otherwise, removing tracking is far less likely to produce equitable results. Very interesting. It would be just probably a mess if this is not done, in a reasonable fashion. The people who provide leadership for the professional development, they can determine success or failure. The most important research in any school building is teaching expertise. And then it says, when professional development needs arise, experts are typically called in to provide support. However, bringing in outsiders who have not had the opportunity to build trusting relationships with the school staff can backfire if their training experience is either too short-lived or not useful, or applicable to practice. So let's keep going about this detracking situation. So it says removing barriers to student learning is a process that must evolve so that educators can challenge the racist norms in education head on. And then it talks about how, in short, this means creating professional learning pathways that draw on the expertise of teachers in the building and that are designed for long-term consistent application of new skills. So it says shortening up opportunities that increase teachers' abilities is necessary if the inequitable status quo of tracking students is to be taken apart once and for all. Only then will schools see the gains in student achievement that we know are possible. And I just want to say that, yes, there should be a focus on instructional practice and on differentiated instruction. I think also we need to start looking at the master schedule and looking at the courses that have been allotted in our schools that are attributing to students of diverse, marginalized populations to automatically be slotted into those places. I think instead of focusing on that, there should be a lift of that, and there should be a focus on the efforts of those students and their ability to show that they can thrive in these courses. I know some schools have taken off certain labelings, like instead of doing Algebra 1 honors, intensive algebra, they've just done Algebra 1 for all students, or they've just done Algebra 1 honors for all students coming in to the 8th grade, 9th grade, whatever it is for that particular school. And they have found that there's some shame that has been removed from students that are in the lower level classes because they're now being, challenged with the higher level of math, which is the Algebra 1 honors. And then what that does is not only does that restore their dignity, that also challenges them and says, well, the school has made me own the fact that I'm now in an Algebra 1 honors class, so I've got to just step up to the plate and make it happen. The only kickback from that is if you have a parent that is very adamant about, I don't want my kid doing honors, it's too hard for them. You do have parents like that are trying to slow down the progress of their student because they just don't trust that their student will be able to flow with it. However, if the school starts with all Algebra 1 honors, and that's like the intro point in a math class or in a math their math structure towards, their diploma or whatnot, doesn't really have a say because that's just how it's being offered. So we have to start thinking the tracking situation, and why do certain leaders feel like there have to be certain courses offered in tracking? I mean, when you're an administrator and they're saying, okay, you have this many students that weren't proficient on the state test, so it's a pickle, because administrators and principals are like, well, I don't want to offer them Algebra 1 again. I mean, they just took it. So we've got to rename it or do something different. You can't do Algebra Honors because that's not necessarily it. We have to go over some, remedial skills of those students. So we'll put them in intensive algebra. And that's why there's been so much pressure from, APs of curriculum that have been implementing the master schedule and coming up with the courses as to how they could justify that student taking, Algebra 1, but not taking it at the more rigorous level that they were taking it before. So that is the conversation that district leaders need to have with their principals and assistant principals as to how do we want to track this year? Do we want to do intensive algebra or, Algebra 1A, Algebra 1B, Algebra 1, or just all Algebra Honors? And then if you don't pass it, what happens? Do you take Algebra Honors again? What, and that is the conversation, because if they take Algebra 1 Honors again, and then they're among students that are taking Algebra 1 for the first time, are they going to be bored because it's going at a speed that, is, too slow for them because they just went over it the year before? What's going on there? That is a very hefty conversation that has to be had with leaders. How are we labeling these courses? Maybe it could be Algebra 1 Honors 1, Algebra 1 Honors 2, something like that. I'm not sure. I think that definitely has to be a conversation with leaders at the table to see how we can help students win. That if students don't pass Algebra 1 the first time, then they can still take, Algebra 1, but maybe, just have some extra remediation in there. But the labeling is key. Do we do intensive algebra? Because when you say intensive algebra, that makes the student feel like, I know I'm in this class, and that just, it can really attack their levels of motivation and their grit levels. Versus if you said everyone's starting at Algebra 1 Honors, or, Algebra 1 Honors 1, Algebra 1 Honors 2, and each class has, specifics. So you're taking Algebra 1 Honors 1 because that's the class everyone takes. And then Algebra 1 Honors 2 is the class that you're taking because you either did not pass, or there are certain things that you want to strengthen in your ability as an algebra student, and give that option for students. I don't know, just thinking off the top of my head there, that's a very interesting conversation that we have to have. I think also, when you're looking at assessments, all students, taking the third grade assessment, and unfortunately having students, of marginalized BIPOC communities not doing as well. I think that we have to start also looking at those assessments and seeing what is the language in those assessments, and what are the relevant parts of those assessments that can help students to relate to the context of those assessments. Yes. But then how are we motivating students and, convincing them that it's worth their effort and it's worth them trying when they're taking these assessments, not to give up, not to Christmas tree, and not to put their head down, not to just check out because they get frustrated. I think that in this generation, unfortunately, some students, they just are tired of trying and they give up easier than, previous generations. So we have to figure out, how do we continue to stimulate their ability to try and to stimulate their persistence, their grit levels, so that they want to continue to persist towards the absolute end and do their best for every single problem. That's what matters right now, is, really that academic grit, pushing that more than ever for all students, no matter who shows up to our classroom. So with that said, this has been a wonderful session. Thank you so much for joining me again on the Grit and Equity podcast with yours truly, Dr. India White. I do want to remind you guys to, when you get a chance, check out my website, www.india-white.com for books, blogs, or to schedule me for a speaking event or a coaching event, or if you're wanting books or PD, whatever you're wanting. On social media when you get a chance, Facebook is Miss India White, LinkedIn is The India White, Twitter is Indie Speak and Teach, Instagram is Indie238, YouTube is India White 123, and TikTok is Dr. India White. Also, I will see you guys at some upcoming events. FCTM's around the corner. Actually, it's this week. Can't is July. NCSM, I'll see you there. I'll see you at NCTM. I'm hoping to also see you as a featured speaker at Iowa's ICTM, also OCTM, also being a featured speaker at ATMNE, and more. So if you don't see a conference up there and you know your conference is coming up, feel free to shoot me an email or give my information to one of your rockstar leaders, and let's work together. Let's see how we can combine our expertises and have some fun together. Now, I also want to remind you guys to check out the Grit Mini Workshop, how to harness grit to help students thrive. Check that out whenever you get a chance. And also make sure that you're checking out the X Factor EDU Network, which is hosted by Dr. Matthew Joseph. And this podcast will be there as well. This podcast will also be on Spotify. So make sure that you're doing that. And also, if you're wanting to be featured on the Grit and Equity Talks podcast, you can send me an email at india.white.123@gmail.com. And so with that said, guys, it has been fabulous. I'm hoping to see many of you soon. Thank you for all that you do for those that are out here providing content, providing knowledge, just at the forefront and just making some great things happen. We're so thankful for you. You're irreplaceable. Continue to take care of yourself. Happy birthday to all the June people out here. This is our month for all of the June birthdays. So thrilled about it. And so until next time, I will see you guys later. Stay